There's a famous question, I believe the Sefer HaChinuch asks, why are we counting up? Why aren't we counting down? Because the Sefer HaChinuch explains that we're counting in excitement towards Matan Torah, that we're excited, that we're longing for Matan Torah. So, if that's the case, why should we be counting up? So, I think the Sefer HaChinuch says that when a person's counting and there's so many more days left, so it's like too depressing. So we have to start counting. So we're one day closer, 2 days closer. What really he says, but by the time you get to today, 26, 25, 26, so maybe we should switch around the order. We're already more than halfway there. So maybe we should now start counting down. And we have today's 26, we have only 24 more days left to go, right? 23 more days to count. So he says that it's not the right way of counting to like switch in the middle. You switch in the middle, so once you're counting in one order, you keep going. But I remember seeing another pshat, complement this, just goes a little bit maybe deeper, that when a person is counting towards something and they are longing for that, so if they're counting down, that means they really want it to be there already. They want school to be over. They want to reach a destination. So they're very thirsty. The Sefer HaChinuch says, like Ke'eved Yishaf L'Tzel, like somebody is he's working in the field. It's hot. He wants his drink already. So if the case is that he just wants it to be here already, so then the time that's elapsing between now and then is dividing between him and his goal. So then he's counting is closer and closer. So there's only 2 days left. There's only 1 day left. We're almost there. It's a few hours to go. But if a person is using the time to get there, so now the time that's between now and let's say Matan Torah isn't what's dividing between the person and Kabbalah Torah, but it's actually what's bringing him. It's the vehicle to bring him to Matan Torah. So then it's appropriate to count up, because every day that a person has come in Sfiras Omer has brought him closer. So he's 1 day closer, 2 days closer, 3 days closer. Instead of just being that there's this many days left, he's saying that he's already this many days close, because there's 49 days of bringing a person towards the level of reaching Matan Torah. I once heard a similar idea. Maybe I want to share this with you. I think the Malbim says this idea that by Yaakov Avinu we find that he said that it was like such few days in his love for Rachel to work for her for 7 years. So he says, such few days should be the opposite. If a person loves somebody, it seems like forever.
Right.
It takes so long.
Yeah.
So he says, but if a person values something so much, so then the price that they have to pay for it, even if it's a high price, seems like it's not a high price, because it's worth so much to them. So if this wasn't just a love of a lust that Yaakov had for Rachel, but it was recognition of the value, of the beauty, of the depth, of how wonderful she was. So to work for 7 years was a small price to pay. It was like only a few days to be able to get something so special. So in that sense, that was also that he didn't look at it like he should have it already, but he looked at it like, okay, I need to work to get this special thing, but this is a small amount of work to give, to do to get it. So I wanted to speak a little bit about one of the aspects of preparing for Matan Torah. Somebody asked me a question yesterday, and I like the question. Maybe I've thought of it before. Maybe you thought about this question before. The question was, we find that the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva were nifter during this time of Sfiras Omer. And we have, because of that, Sfira beards. As my son said, that he looks around and he sees that the Sfira beards. So, what's this? It's a sign of Avelos. Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva were nifter, and there's no chasanas at this time, music, right? So we have this time that's somewhat avelus. So the fellow asked me, we don't find so much in the Jewish calendar that we have times of avelus other than in the Chodesh Av, right? We have the 3 weeks from Bein HaMitzarim until Tisha B'Av. We have fast day, right? So we brought that up, that we have. You're right. You have some Gedalia. We have a Sar B'Tevis.
Why do you make such a long period as opposed to a single commemoration day?
On those fast days, we have just that one day.
Right, and the same thing here. Why was it made into be a period as opposed to a single day?
Right. And the truth is that all those fast days that also have to do with the Chorban Beis HaMikdash, because it was the day that the city was breached, or that it was laid siege, or that it was the last remnant of the hold in Yerushalayim, Gedalia ben Achikam, and it had to do with the Chorban Beis HaMikdash also. And this, like you're saying, on the one hand, we make a prolonged time period of Avelis, 33 days, 34 days, and at the same time, it doesn't seem like it's connected to the Chorban Beis HaMikdash. And there were many tragedies and pogroms and Lo Aleinu and destructions of communities, but we don't find that we're making maybe we're making something small, but not a prolonged thing like this. And that was his question. So the question is something to think about.
There were a couple of answers on this. A, because in the case of Rabbi Akiva's, they weren't giving kavod to each other, right? So it was an issue of having to repair that, and it wasn't a commemoration. It was a matter of the way people behaved, and that had to be repaired, and therefore it took more time. The other thing that was mentioned was, I believe in the Crusades time, that the Crusades were also in this period between Pesach and Shavuos, and therefore it was set to
together with
also to commemorate.
Rabbi Akiva.
Yeah.
So I was thinking that we have to think about, go back a step, of why did the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva die specifically during this period? In other words, they did have this flaw, and there's something that needed to be fixed. But why now? Did they just have this flaw now? Did they not have the flaw before Pesach? The rest of the year was something that just popped up now. So it probably wasn't random that now was the time that the Gezerah, the Midas Adin, came on them. So the art school has a Lag Omer sefer. I couldn't find it on the shelf now, but they bring up another point, and that is that if you medayek the lashon of the Gemara and Yevamos, when it says this, that the Talmidim Rabbi Akiva were nifter, so it says Yud Beis Elef Zugim Talmidim Hayu Rabbi Akiva. 12,000 pairs of students Rabbi Akiva had. The Kulan Meisu Beperak Echad. They all died in the same section of time. Because they didn't conduct themselves with honor towards each other. So the Lashon is not 24,000 students, but it says 12,000 pairs of students. So why does it say 12,000 pairs of students? So the answer is that it's emphasizing that Rabbi Akiva trained them to be pairs of students, and he trained them to be, meaning not just to learn on their own, that it wasn't just an individual pursuit, but that they should be learning together with a study partner, with a chavusa, and as such, that's why they're looked at as zugim of talmidim. Sometimes people ask me, this is a paid commercial. Sometimes people ask me why Chavusashaft is called Chavusashaft. What is the Chavusashaft? So it's a program that we pair people out with chavusas to learn together. But what is a Chavusashaft? So I tell people that there's a partner, and there's two partners in a partnership, and then so a partnership is like a Chavusashaft. There's two chavusas in a Chavusashaft. So so the idea is that when a person has a chavusa and they're studying together, they can come to reach the goal of Kinyan Torah, of understanding the Torah together as the chavusa, as a partnership. And that's why it was zugim talmidim. It was groups of talmidim, pairs of talmidim. And we know, last week we spoke about a little bit about V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, which was taught by Rabbi Kiva. And last week we spoke about in the context of not taking ribbis from another yid, and the Ramban explains that that's based on V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. It's not something that would be obligated otherwise. It's only because we're obligated toward chesed and ava towards our brother, this is something that we cannot do to our brother. And it's amazing, it's baffling to think of the ramifications of the lack of what the Talmidim Rebbe Kiva on their level didn't, what was brought upon them because of the lack of not being noy kavod zeh b'zeh. That was it. Okay. So now I wanted to speak about this topic of the chevra of Talmidei Chachamim, and people study together and reaching that level of togetherness and of brotherliness, of respect towards each other in Torah. So there's Chazal says like this. First of all, there's a Rambam, and the Rambam says that it's in Perish Mishnayos in Maseches Tamai, Parak Beis Mishnah Gimel, and the Rambam says that why do we find that Talmidei Chachamim are called in the lashon of the Mishnah Chaverim? Chaver, Talmid Chacham, was somebody who was a Talmid Chacham who kept all the minute details of the laws of Tumah and Tahara, and so the Talmidei Chacham were called Chaverim. So Chaver means a friend. Why, says the Rambam, is a Talmid Chacham called a Chaver? It's a quote. It's a quote from the translation of the Rambam into Hebrew. Chaver Nikra Talmid Chacham. We have from the Rambam is in Hebrew. It's a translation, Hebrew translation of the Rambam. It was written in Arabic. So the Rambam says like this: Chaver Nikra Talmid Chacham, v'chein yikaru l'Talmidei Chachamim Chaverim. So why is this? Ulai nikru bazeh Hashem, ki chevrasam zeh lazeh chevra ne'emana. Their friendship towards each other is a true friendship. It's something that's reliable, that's trustworthy. Ki chevra l'shem shemayim. Why? Because their chevra, their unity, it's for the l'shem shemayim, for the sake of heaven. In other words, that if we look around the world, this is very rare to find a true friendship, because usually people have acquaintances with each other because of some self-gain, of something that they stand to benefit from joining up with the other. And there is what to gain in joining up from the other, and people recognize when you have somebody else, then you could accomplish more. And believe it's Rashi in Parshas Shlach brings a calculation of the amount that two of the Meraglim were able to carry was more than double of what each one of the spies was able to carry in terms of carrying the fruit, each one on their own. So what a person could accomplish with somebody else is more than double, and a person has to stand. There really is personal gain from from cooperating with others.
That's reflected in the famous fresco, the Ark of Titus, with the two guys with a pole between them.
That's right.
And carrying a huge bunch of grapes.
Cluster of grapes.
Yeah.
Because they could carry more.
Yeah.
I believe in Rashi Parshas Shlach, I can find the Rashi. They carried very heavy loads, the big fruit.
More than twice that each could carry himself.
Yeah. So as I was quote, I think I found from Rashi, if I can find it.
What Israel uses for the tourism industry. But there was some criticism about that because, all the things to pick from what Israel, there are most people don't, knowledge of it.
Inappropriate.
It works.
Okay, so Rashi brings that you want to know how much each one carried. So Tzeu Lamad mi'avanim shekimu begilgol harimu lehem ish even achas min hayardin al shichmoi v'kimu begilgol v'shaklam rabbeinu mishkol kol achas arboim sa. So the amount that each person was able to carry when they were putting up the stones that they put up in Gilgal, that they took from the Yarden to write the Torah on and translate it into 70 languages, so each one was able to carry the weight of 40 sa. And we have a tradition, tuna de midliyenish, a load that a person carries a katve on his shoulders, ene el shlish masoi, it's only 1/3 of the load, mimasoi shemisayan oisel laharim, of the load that another person helps him carry together.
Right.
So one person.
This is Rashi.
This is Rashi brings. This is Rashi in Parshas Klamid, in Parshas Shlach, Perek Yud Gimel, Pasuk Chav Gimel. Okay, so Rashi brings from Chazal. So I believe it's Gemara in Saita, Daf Lamed, Daled Amud Aleph. Rashi's quote. Okay, so on the and still, what is asked of us, is not to join together with your friend because of what you have to gain, but to join the Shem Shamayim. And the Chaverim, the Talmidei Chachamim are called Chaverim because they're reaching the truth together. It's not in it just for their own personal gain, but it's to reach the emes, to reach the truth, to reach the Ratzon of Hashem in this world. So they're called Chaverim. Okay, so that's the Rambam. Now the Gemara says in Maseches Yevamos, Daf Yud Gimel, about Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. So it says in the Mishnah in Yud Gimel and the Gemara in Daf Yud Daled, the Gemara says that we find that even though Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel had so many machlaikisim, they had machlaikisim about which women, how mitzvah yibum could consequently lead to questions of which woman, whether somebody's actually permitted to get married or not permitted to get married, and other machlaikisim about taharos, but nevertheless they still didn't part ways from each other when they would inform each other that it was permissible for the other one, and they kept to their standards and so on. And the Gemara says that lamedcha shechiba v'reyos nehagim zeh bazeh, that they had a love and a friendship that they had that they conducted amongst themselves. Shenemar brings a pasuk in Zechariah, ha'emes v'hashalom havu. So we know that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel was what the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos calls, Parakeh Mishnah Zayin, that Kol Machlekes L'Shem Shamayim Soifa L'Hiskayim. That Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel was they argued, but they didn't argue to prove their own point right because they wanted to be right. They argued because L'Shem Shamayim, they wanted to reach the truth. So they had, in the end, that brought them to chiba v'reyos. And even if each one still held of their position, they still had this respect for each other, the Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel had. And that's why it says that there was chiba v'reyos, that was noyeg, that they were able to come to, didn't become like an emotional insult, that they couldn't marry each other and they had a grudge against each other, or they had some kind of feud. It wasn't like that. It was a machlekes that was l'shem shamayim. So, if a person, people are arguing.
So practically, they would marry within each other's group.
They would marry, and they just had to be careful that they were permitted to get married according to their own view. But they would nevertheless marry. Yes, if yibum was done properly in the proper situation, and there's the cases of tsaris, I forgot the exact of a co-wife, erva, where they had to do yibum, didn't have to do yibum. So, but either way, when it was permissible, they did marry each other. So the machlokes, that's l'shem shamayim, it's actually it's the same thing that's driving both people, and they can actually help each other, because if they each have the same goal, their pursuit of truth. So when they argue out and each one says his view, they're actually helping each other sharpen the truth and reach what is the emes. So because of that, they're actually helping each other. And this is what Rabbi Akiva was teaching his Talmidim, that they should learn bechavusa, and there should be zugais of Talmidim. Because that if the value of learning bechavusa is that they sharpen each other, they help speak it out, they crystallize the ideas, and because of that, they could reach the emes. I believe that there's a letter from Rabbi Salanter that he writes that he once had Rabbi Salanter was known to be a big baal. He started the Muslim movement and the ethics, right? So he tried to start a study group, a yeshiva or a beis medrash, where they would study with the utmost, you heard this? With the utmost respect for each other. And they wouldn't be like a fierce battle, an argument, but that they would speak respectfully towards each other. And one of the ways was that when one person speaking, so his friend would finish and wait, say, okay, now are you done? Yeah, finished? Yes. You've said your entire position. Okay. Now I will say my point. And they would listen to each other and then and discuss.
Obviously didn't catch on.
We're with the Gentiles who did, apparently.
He found, Rabbi Salanter found from this, we'll call it experiment, that they did not reach the same sharpness of analysis through this approach. And they did not. And the Gemara in Kedushin says that you find there's a pasuk that says by the Be'er Shal Miriam, there's a short shira. The shira is called Shiras HaBe'er, and anyway, there's some bunch of cryptic psukim there, they're darshan, and one of them is Es Vahev Basufa. So there's a drasha from Chazal that say that that what you find in the end of Talmidei Chachamim arguing, even a father and a son, or a brother and another brother, that they study together. In the beginning, they start off studying, they become enemies. But at the end, the nasim oyavim zezeh. In Basufa, in the end, it's esvay. It comes to ava. It comes to ava, because through a machlekes l'shem shamayim, that becomes a fierce battle. But if it's l'shem shamayim, then ultimately they thank each other for helping each other reach the emes, and for bringing each other to to that level. Now, I'm not saying that a person can only study with a chavrusa. A person has to know for themselves, but we do know that Chazal say about somebody that studies alone that cherav al saneim shel tamidei chachamim sheyoshvim bad bebad v'oiskim b'Torah. What does that mean? It's really talking about tamidei chachamim, but he calls them, doesn't want to say a cherav on tamidei chachamim, so a sword on tamidei chachamim, says cherav al saneim shel tamidei chachamim. That if they do what? That they sit yoshvim bad bebad, that they sit alone by themselves, and the Isaac in Torah that so it says that v'la'oid ela shemitapshim, that they become tipshim, they become foolish. So the person, the siyata d'shmaya, the help of Hashem of studying Torah is in a situation of learning together with others and from discussing with others. And if a person thinks that it's just his approach and he doesn't need to consider what other people's views are, and he doesn't need to discuss it with them, so that's not the way to study Torah. Could a person learn on their own and take into account what the svaras that have been written in svarim in different books that we had, or maybe after he learned it, discuss with others what he came up with? It could be. It doesn't have to be that the only approach is that a person will learn the actual Gemara for the first time with his chavrusa. It could be they could learn it together, learn it separate, and then discuss it with others, or write back and forth. Chiddushei Torah and Shuvas, there's different ways of learning together. But certainly, the Torah is nisrabe, it grows and increases through the togetherness through learning together. Now, I saw a Chazal that's quoted by Ali Sefer Ali Shor about this idea, and it's a medrash in Shir Hashirim. The medrash says it's actually talking about Jewish people coming together to shul, and they daven together, and they say Kriya Shema out loud at the same time, and they answer Amen together, and Kedusha together, and it's with a unity. So the pasuk says in Shir Hashirim, Hayeshevet beganim chaverim makshivim lekalecha hashmi'ini. So who are these chaverim that are listening to your voice that Hashem says, let me hear it?
Sorry?
The pasuk says, Hayeshevet beganim, when it sits in the gardens. And it's talking about Kadosh Baruch Hu talking to Klal Yisrael. Chaverim makshivim lekalecha. The chaverim, we're going to see in the Medrash, is the malachim, are listening to your voices, Klal Yisrael. Hashmi'ini, let me hear it. It's actually the Rashi in this pasuk is also very beautiful. Maybe we'll see that in a second. But this is the Medrash. Rav Nasan Rishim Rebacha Omer. He's going to give a mashal. L'melech shekatz al avodav l'chavshem nebeis koilin. The Melech got angry at his servants, and he locked them up in a jail, in a beis hasayar. Mal asa Melech knotal kol hakatz kartin, all of his officers, shalai v'avodav v'halach l'shmoya ma ha'yuhein omer, and he went to hear what are they saying. What are they saying? He wants to hear what's going on in the jail. Shama shayoimrim, he heard that they're saying Adeineinu HaMelech, they're praising the king in the jail when they're locked up. They're saying, our master, the king, Hu Shivchenu, he is our praise, Hu Chayenu, he is our life. Al Nechzar L'Adeineinu HaMelech L'Olam, may we never lose the king, our master, forever. He should live forever. So when he heard this, Amar Lahem, Banai, my children, my sons, Hagbiu kolchem, lift up your voices, Kadesh Yishmu Chaverim Shal Gabechem, so that all the Chaverim, meaning his officers that are with him, that are accompanying him, should be able to hear you. So this is a muscle to Klal Yisrael, says the Medrash. Kach, Aval Bish Yisrael Oiskim B'Mlachtan Kol Shishas Yomim. Even though the Jewish people are involved in their own pursuits of their labor all 6 days of the week, but when it comes Shabbos, Mashkim Muvan L'Beis HaKnesses, they come to Shul. The Beis HaKnesses literally means a house of gathering. The Karin Kriyashma, V'Ayvim L'Fnei HaTeva, and they the Karin B'Torah, Maftirim B'Navi. They read the Kriyashma. They go in front of the Chazan as davens in front of the whole tzibur, and they read the Torah. They read the Navi. Because Baruch Omer Len. So Hashem, when he hears this, he says, Banai, Hagbiu Kolchem, say it louder. Kadesh Yishmu Chaverim. And who are these Chaverim? Malachi Asharis. V'tnu Daitchem. And Hashem says, this is the end of the Medrash, don't just say it loud, but make sure, take heed. Shlaitisnu says that you shouldn't hate each other, you shouldn't have jealousy amongst each other, you shouldn't have competition amongst each other, you shouldn't embarrass each other. So the Malachi Asharis shouldn't say, because if you do any of these, the Malachi Asharis will say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono Shel Olam, Torah shenasato lahem liYisrael, the Torah that you gave to the Jewish people, einon oiskin ba, they're not delving into it, they're not involved in that Torah. How do we see that? Look, there's hatred, there's jealousy, there's competition amongst them. And you be mekayim b'shalom, and then the malachim won't have any taina against them. So we see what the Medrash is saying is that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu hears Klal Yisrael's shevach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they hear HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees them studying the Torah, and they're doing it with unity. They're doing it without jealousy, without hatred. So then that is that's like music to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ears, and he calls all the malachim to come to hear this. And what Shlomo Wolbe brings from this medrash is that you see that if they wouldn't be doing it with unity, if they were doing it, if they had kinah, so what does the medrash say? That the malachim will say they're not involved, they're not Isaac in the Torah. What do you mean they're not Isaac in the Torah? They are. They're reading the Torah. So what? They have jealousy, they have hatred, but they're reading the Torah. But we see no, that's called Ein Oiskim B'Torah. If they have midas ra'is, if they have jealousy and hatred and competition, and they're out to get each other, so then that's not called being Isaac B'Torah. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm adding on that the Baalei Musar say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu took the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva away because that's not Torah. Torah on their level, the Rabbi Akiva was the Meiser HaTorah, the link in the chain for the entire generation to give over the Torah. If the Torah is without a proper respect for each other, then it's not with the Ava between each other. So then that's called not Oiskim B'Torah. That's not the Torah that's going to be the emes that can be passed down for generations. You know, when you pass down Torah, it's not just passing it on to one generation. It's being passed down this is a link for many generations. So if you have an arrow and you shoot the arrow and it's a little bit off, you have a missile that's a far-reaching missile and it's off a little bit. So, but when it gets 100 miles away, it's going to be way off the mark. So if the Torah is passed down in the generation of Rabbi Akiva in a way that there's jealousy and it's because of that it leads to mistake in the way and the emes of the Torah, then that Torah can't be passed down. You have to that Kodesh Baruch Hu, so to speak, cleared the slate, and there were 5 more Talmidim afterwards.
Such a harsh judgment. It was so widespread to destroy 24,000 souls. And what about the rest of the population, the Komer? These guys were. What about everybody else? What level were they at? It just seems like such a harsh judgment. So what I'm suggesting is that it wasn't
just a punishment. It was something that was for the continuity of Klal Yisrael's Torah, for the Jewish people to continue of course, we don't know the Darkei Hashem. We can't understand the details of it. But in the generality, what I'm saying is that in order for the Torah that I've heard, this concept that I've heard, that for the Torah to continue, it needed to be that, there was a reset, so to speak, and that there had to be a restart, and it was the Rabbi Akiva gave over the Torah, and it was but now he told he when it came to the next 5, he instructed them. He said, you make sure that you don't make the same mistake as the other students, because look what happened to them, because they didn't have kavod, because they didn't have respect towards each other.
Was it an illness?
It's a question historically what it was. I think the main opinion is that it was a plague. Yeah, it was a plague, but it's not just that it was coincidence. Unfortunate happening that it happened that it was a plague.
The most famous mimer probably of Rabbi Akiva, which all the kids in school know, is Klal Gadol V'Torah V'Ahavta L'Recha Kamecha.
Right.
Now, did he say that after the death of his students? Was this a revelation he had after his students died? Or was this something, if this is something he said before they died, I mean, it would seem to be very nogea in the sense that, how are we supposed to understand the relationship between this mimer of Rabbi Akiva and the death of his students?
Was it something, you want to know if that mimer was said before?
Yeah,
or
it could have been a reaction to it. It could have been a reaction.
One of the sources I was reading yesterday, it sounded like he said it before already, but I don't know for a fact.
They weren't listening.
It's not just necessarily a question of listening or in a superficial level. There's something that's deep. It's something that's in avodas hamidas. So even if they could know the statement,
sure,
but
they have to internalize.
Right.
But for what you're suggesting, this interpretation, it's almost like a mini mumble, right? Like you say reset, clear the slate, and make sure that the Torah that gets handed down is almost like a starting again. I mean, it's a horrible thing.
Yeah, yes.
24,000 souls.
And so what in the Lag BaOmer reader from the article, which I assume they're bringing from sources, but I didn't get a chance to see what they suggest is the answer to my question of why was it during this time that the Talmidim Rabbi Akiva died specifically, and it's connected to the fact that they were Talmidim Rabbi Akiva, and they bring a Ramban. The Ramban says that during the times of Aseret Tshuva, during the times when a person has an opportunity to do tshuva, and it's the time of the Yom Noraim, if they don't do tshuva during that time, it's a much worse than any other time during the year, because now is the time of opportunity. Now is the time that's mesugel for that. And this time was the time of preparing for Matan Torah, of gathering, like Klal Yisrael approached Matan Torah. How did they accept the Torah? Ke'ish echad b'leiv echad, that they came to encircle the mountain and to come to be a Klal Yisrael, that the Torah was given to them together as a unit, wasn't given just to Yechidim. And during this time was a time when they were supposed to be much more so focused on fixing this up, and being that they were Talmidim Rabbi Akiva who taught this lesson, and they were in his proximity, to not internalize that lesson in the proximity of Rabbi Akiva. And during this time, that's specifically why it was now. So perhaps it was something that for all generations we need to learn this lesson now, and we need to be reminded of that this is a time of Sfiras Omer, that look at the tragedy, don't let it repeat itself, and mourn the loss that was brought about through those, let's call it Aveiros, And ultimately, the Rambam tells us that all days are fast days that we have, that are mourning some tragic event, isn't just mourning some historical loss, but it's to repent, and it's coming to tell us, don't continue in the ways of your forefathers that did such and such a sin that brought about such a calamity and such a midas adin upon them. So we have to think and learn that lesson, and ultimately that to fix that up, that we could focus on counting towards Matan Torah. And if we do, so then these days could be days when we're not just waiting when is Matan Torah going to come because we're excited to get the Torah, which is in itself a great thing of building up our excitement and our longing for Matan Torah. But it could be something that we could use these days as days of preparation, of days of not only realizing the chashivas, the importance of the Torah that we are so excited to receive, but the importance of the unity of Klal Yisrael and of those who accept the Torah to realize that we have to be mechabed our peers and our friends and others, and the Talmidei Chachamim who even if they're not of the same opinion as us, because if we argue l'shem shamayim, so that they don't have the same opinion, but we don't resent them because of that. On the contrary, a machlekes of l'shem shamayim brings to ava v'reyos, and we have to realize that that is actually important for the emes of the Torah to be reached. That there is this dialogue and there is this machlekes l'shem shamayim and dispute, and it's not just we're going to keep silent because we don't want to step on anybody's toes here, so even though we see that somebody's doing the wrong thing or saying the wrong thing, so we'll let him go his way. There's a powerful quote that it says, like from Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, it says that Avram gave Teichacha to Avimelech. And so Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina says, HaTeichacha mevia lidei ava. Teichacha, rebuke, brings to love. Shenemar Echeach lechacham, Pasuk in Mishlei says, rebuke a wise man, v'yaveka, and he will love you. In other words, when the one who receives the rebuke is a chacham, he knows that this is something that is a favor that's being done to him. That he's getting something, he's getting an opportunity to be able to see something that he didn't see, that he didn't notice, that he's doing something wrong, that he could reach perfection because of this rebuke. And he loves the person who gave it to him. So the Medrash says, he died to Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, to Omer, called Ava she'eni mateichacha eina Ava. If they have love but they don't have teichacha, that's not Ava. Because imagine, in other words, the idea here is, it's brought in the Parish of the Sefer Yefei Torah on the Medrash, from that he says that if a person sees his friend, imagine a person sees his friend that's making a grave mistake. So if he doesn't care, if he's his friend and he really cares about him, so he'll correct him. But if he doesn't care about him, so he'll say, no, it's more comfortable not to say anything. And so we need to find the proper balance in ourselves, that on the other hand, we care enough about each other to argue, and on the other hand, and on the other side of the coin is to care about the emes enough that when we argue, we're not arguing because we want our position to be accepted, but because we want together to reach the emes, and that's a balance. It's a balance of not remaining silent and not arguing out of kinna and tachros, of jealousy and competition, but arguing to reach the l'shem shamayim, and that's what the Rav Chaim Volozhiner said from his Rebbe, the Gra. He said, if a person can't give teichacha in a gentle way, he's patur from the mitzvah of teichacha. That's what he said. He can't, okay? Because that's when it's going to be listened to. We can't give teichacha in a gentle way, because it has to be that it is l'shem shemayim, and it's not just coming out of kas, out of anger, trying to force somebody to accept your view, or because you're upset that they're not doing what you think is the right thing, and how dare they not do what your opinion is. But it has to be coming from a place of concern and of care for the truth, and then Bez Hashem, through argument, and through the argument that comes from the wanting to reach the emes, will come to love each other and appreciate each other's views and value them properly. And even if it won't always look in the process, it will look like a battle. It won't look like you're waiting till the other guy finishes you'll be arguing fiercely. But at the same time, it's coming from a place that's to midas tayvais, ultimately, and a bikush emes, a search for the truth, and through this, through a desire to reach a real appreciation for each other, we should come to appreciate the Torah that we're coming to receive, and those who learn the Torah, and help us together, together that we could, not just on our own, but we could reach the emes and the Torah together. Shakar.